excited to have Jordan Nutter here with us today. For those who don't know Jordan, I hope you start to follow her after because she's been on quite the journey this last year, and we will dig into a lot of that in the coming moments. But just quickly, she's known as the mobile mortgage mom. She has been in an RV wrapped in beautiful marketing, both of herself and NFM lending, traveling across the country with her family. I'll let her share some details about that in a minute. And really just revolutionizing how we think about relationships. I think in general, we've gotten so caught up with social media, and it's still a great tool, but there's also that in-person interaction that's so critical, and it's hard to do when we're all remote. And so Jordan has just come up with such a creative way to reach out to people, and also a purpose behind it to really educate beyond just building relationships. Wonderful. Thank you, Sonia. I wasn't kidding. It's a beautiful wrapped in marketing. And she is also the VP of Creator Collective Division at NFM Lending. So I've got two questions we got to start with. Let's go with the Creator Collective first, because what is Creator Collective Division? Like, what does that mean, and what do you do?
Yeah, so with the Creator Collective, we actually used to be called the Influencer Division. And this was when it first started years ago, before there was really a big division wrapped around it. And since then, influencer has gotten kind of like this bad reputation. So we decided to rebrand it. And so it's the Creator Collective now. And essentially, we are the first mortgage company in the industry that has a full-on content creator division. Like, everyone that's on the division makes content in some way, shape, or form on some platform for social media. That doesn't mean it's necessarily their bread and butter and all of their, where their leads come from and their business, but they either, started off small and wanted to grow, or they do have a majority of their business coming from social media. So that is our division. We also partner up with different agents across the country that are also pretty prominent on social media, and they're just not quite sure how to sift through those leads. We have a whole system that we built out. So that's a little bit about our division.
I love that. And I think there's so many options right now around creating content, whether you do it yourself, whether you hire a company, or in this instance, the company actually creates that division and puts resources towards it. So another lovely permeation of that. And I'm sure people here might want to reach out. So if you're comfortable with that, we'll make sure they have your contact.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's I think a really good idea. And I know some of the IMBs out there are really embracing that as a division rather than just a service that they pay for from someone else. So really cool that
100%.
you guys are doing that. And I like the rebranding. I feel bad that influencers gotten a bad rep, but it feels a little bit more sophisticated or mature. So we'll bring some maturity to the industry.
Yeah.
So given that you've been on this incredible tour of the country, let's start with, where are you in America? Like, where's Waldo? Where's Jordan
Yeah.
in America right now today?
I am in Atlanta right now. So that's where I don't want to say started our journey, because we technically started the road trip in California. But Atlanta is where I'm based. Like, this is where our home is. And due to a few, unforeseen circumstances, we had to pivot a little bit regarding the tour as a whole. Because originally it was supposed to be just shy of 6 months, and then we essentially cut it down to just over 3 months. So we just finished, our last event was actually in Chattanooga. And so we were fortunate enough, Chattanooga is not that far from Atlanta, and it was really perfect timing to where we were able to kind of settle back into our home.
Love that. How many cities did you actually end up in?
So we went from Southern California down to Key West, up to New York, over to Ohio, and then down to Chattanooga. So, I mean, when we're going from like stop to stop, I believe we were just over 20 cities.
Wow.
State-wise, I have to do the final count. We covered a lot of ground. We
Yeah, sounds
definitely
like
covered
it.
a lot of ground.
And what inspired you to even do this in the first place?
So essentially the same reason why I started social media. I got into the business, what, almost 5 years ago. And, you're new, nobody ever wants to work with you. You get the short end of the stick. And I said, give me anyone that your preferred lenders don't want to work with. Give me those like first time home buyers, need their hand held, don't have great credit, and let me help them. And at the time, I was new and didn't know a whole lot, but I learned as much as I could and was researching and shadowing different people and got to a point where I could really help and educate clients. And I had just this overwhelming frustration and sadness of like people that would come to me and not understand, the difference between your credit scores, or that you don't need 20% down, or you don't need a 700 credit score to qualify. And it was all of these pretty common misconceptions. And that's why I started social media, is because I wanted more people to understand all of these, 20% down, 700 credit scores wasn't necessarily true. And that's what pushed me to do this tour, because as wonderful as social media is, and it has completely changed my business, and I'm forever grateful for it, there is that disconnect because we don't physically get to see these people. And social media, especially from a creator standpoint, is a very, very lonely world. And we don't get the opportunity to truly interact with our followers or potential clients, or we don't have that opportunity. It's very rare. And especially being in the mortgage industry, because most of our jobs can be done remote as opposed to a real estate agent that gets to meet these clients in person. And so I thought, well, we are planning to move back from California to Georgia. Let's go ahead and like maybe make a trip out of it and stop along the way. There's some past clients I could see. Maybe we could help and go to different places and speak. And then that kind of snowballed into a much larger and longer project, which I'm very grateful for. And that's kind of where the idea started.
Yeah. Quick hot seat question before I go into another one. Would you do it again?
I would do it again. I
Okay.
would 100% do it again. I would just go into it with a different mindset, because like we were talking a little bit before we started, the main reason of cutting it short was it's very hard to juggle a full book of business and, trying to create content and be on the road and educate people and make sure we're getting to places on time. And outside of that, my daughter barely walked before we got on this trip. And then now she's running around, and it was like a whole 360 with how much she has changed. So I definitely would do it again. I would just have a different perspective and outlook before kind of jumping into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to not know what you don't know, right?
Right.
So I'm sure when you started the trip, you weren't thinking about child-proof and everything in a camper, which is, by the way, I have a camper. We're about to actually go to the lake here in Arizona, Lake Havasu, this weekend, and it's not easy to child-proof compared to a house.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's super compressed, and it's like no matter what you do, they can get into things. So I
Yep.
can only imagine that as she has grown, it has become more challenging for you.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Do you have a good funny story about something she did that maybe she got into and shouldn't have, or?
She learned how, because a lot of this, they do like they're not locked, they're not childproof, but they're a little bit harder to open the drawers because
Yeah,
they don't want them to automatically
right.
open when you're driving. So
Yep.
there's a little bit more oomph that needs to go behind opening the drawers in a camper or an RV. And so there was one, for some reason, it just didn't stick quite as well. And being that we're in an RV, we're not having like metal and glass our
Sure.
normal ceramic plates. Everything is plastic that we had, reusable, but it was plastic. And so we would go outside, we, put the gate up, go outside, and she knew that was the one drawer she could get into. And we would come back and there'd be plates everywhere and silverware. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she look up like, I don't know. And I'm like, let's put it back. And then she'd get upset because I'd pick it up with her hands and put it back in the drawer. And then every time we would leave, she thought it was a game. And I'm like, this
Okay.
isn't a game. We just don't. So then we had to move it to a different drawer. I was like, oh my goodness. So that was
I mean,
great.
technically you could turn it into a game and probably make some YouTube videos, and some parents would be pretty happy with how to get creative of having a kid in a
Right.
camper, right?
Right. Mhm. Yeah.
So
Putting a baby gate up was interesting. We had to get one of the retractable ones.
yeah,
So that was fun.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
I know there's a question from Tim in the chat, and that it was getting to this topic, so it's perfect timing. But talk to us a little bit about, because I know you did kind of consumer facing and business facing events. Talk about the
Mhm.
different type of events you did. And then his question was, how did you get attendees to show up? And how did you really promote those events and classes that you did?
So consumer facing was geared more towards YMCAs, high schools, community colleges, YMCAs, churches. So any place that would allow us in a public space, that wouldn't necessarily charge me and was willing to just donate the space and allow us to come in. And events like that, depending on what group of people and age I was speaking to, was geared either towards credit basics, like what is credit, what is a credit card? What's the difference between a car payment, or I should say a car loan, and a credit card payment? Why are they different? How are they different? So really breaking down basics all the way up to how to qualify to purchase a home. Am I speaking to more of a first-time home buyer generation? Do they have a basic understanding of credit, but they really want to understand what does it take to qualify for a home? What are debt to income ratios? What do we look at? A lot of people still, when I talk to them, think we look at their income after taxes, and we don't. We look at it before any taxes are taken out. So on a consumer facing, those were the topics. That's where I would try to hold the events. A lot of it was very difficult because it was like, who do we reach out to? Who's going to, be receptive? We also didn't even take into consideration it's the end of the school year. So it was very hard to try to get any sort of schools on board because testing and, any end of the year events. And a lot of it with like title companies or real estate teams, I would reach out to, do you have any sort of class that you would like for me to put on for your clients or potential clients for the community? So that was a lot of hitting the ground running and reaching out and getting told no. And even when we would get a space, there were plenty of events where I had nobody show up. And it was like, okay, you would think with having, at this point, 300,000 followers, like there'd be somebody, on between putting it on Instagram and TikTok and having the church put it out, like somebody would show up, and it just wasn't the case. Now, this wasn't all the time. We had some really wonderful events, and we had events where one person would show up or two people would show up, and that was okay because at the end of the day, it was just to help somebody. And when it came to the business side, that was really reaching out to the agents, because our company covers the entire US except for New York. So that was really beneficial for me because I carry about 7 states, almost all of which I was able to visit. And so that helped out. We have a lot of loan officers that were willing to let me come in and speak to their team or their groups of agents on social media, branding yourself. How is it important? What is important, when making a social media profile and putting content out there and trying to build your community and your brand. So that was a bit easier because, you know, I had a little bit more ease with finding those contacts, or I already had those relationships built. And those, for the most part, those were a better return. And it's interesting because when I told everybody about this, I had so much great feedback. Like, we need this in our schools. We need this in our communities. We need this, we need this, we need this. And then I was like, well, everybody says we need this, but it's the hardest type of event to get people to attend.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, like, we're trying to figure out there's a need for it, but there's not the fulfillment of people coming in. So where is there a disconnect? Like, what needs to happen to get the two together? So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love all of your transparency and sharing that, and your vulnerability to lean in and talk about events where people didn't show up, because that could be very hard to not only swallow the pill, but also to say that in front of a group of people right now. And so I honor you for that, getting a lot of likes and hearts for that. Also, I see Ray's comment I'm going to get to in just a second. I want to repeat what you said, because I think it's so profound and people need to know and hear it. You have 300,000 followers and you still had events where people didn't show. I think people worry all the time with social media, whether they have 1,000 followers or 300,000 followers. If I don't get enough likes, if people don't show up to my webinar or read my article or show up to an event, then I'm not doing something of value or worthy. And that is not true, right?
100%.
I believe
100%.
in what you did. I believe that if you impact one person's life, that's more than enough. And you showing up by yourself, even if no one showed up, still meant you were doing something for yourself, right? And having the courage to be there and hope that people did. And if they did, they showed up, you made the most of it. And if they didn't, you still made the most of it, I'm sure.
Yep.
So I honor you for that. And I think it's really good for people to hear that, because I do think people really struggle with feeling like, am I really being successful? Am I reaching people? Is it making a difference?
Oh yeah, there's definitely the struggle with that. And I think it's very difficult when, for me, like, I put a lot into this trip and into these events, and, you know, I have I mean, we're not at millions of followers, but there's enough to where I've built a community to where, hey, I would hope somebody would show up. And so I remember the first event, nobody showed up, and my husband, I called him and I was on the verge of crying, and he goes, "That's okay." And I was like, "It's not okay. Nobody showed up." And he goes, "But you showed up. And here's the thing, there's going to be a day," and I could cry right now because he's just magical. "There's going to be a day when you're going to be speaking to a group of thousands of people, and you're going to tell this story, and they're going to think that you're crazy." And all of these events, whether somebody shows up, one person shows up, hundreds of people show up, there's a purpose, there's a reason behind it, and you are growing as a person, and it's okay. And I was like, you're just saying that to make me feel better." He goes, "No, no, no. There'll be a day when you're not frustrated or sad, and you'll think about it, and you'll tell me that I'm right." And so this is his time to shine, that he's right. So
Yes, he is and was right. And he was both being a good husband and also being honest with you, because that is the truth. And I'm sure it has paid off already and will continue to pay dividends over time. With that, Ray did ask, you did a lot of videos, you did a lot of outreach events. Have you seen it create an ROI? Have you seen additional business come in?
So it's interesting because when I started this, I got a lot of people, interviews, different press. What is the goal of it? You know, you can't just be funding this and not get something out of it. And that really wasn't, going into it, that wasn't my thought process. My thought process was, well, we're already going to be driving back. We might as well make a trip out of it. And if I can help people, like, why not help people? And then it kind of rolled into, well, let's see if we could get some agents and help them. Maybe we can build those relationships. And it's interesting because I can't tell you that I've actually gotten a client from it. I've not gotten one client, like one new client from this entire trip. But I can tell you the return has been stuff like this. Like, I have been able to meet with people and have very meaningful relationships and build relationships. I've been able to go on podcasts and speak to more people. I've had I have three different speaking engagements scheduled for later this year that wouldn't have happened had I not gone on this, because a friend of a friend saw me or was at one of the events. So when it comes to business on the side of clients, no, there's no, as of yet, there has
I
not
was
been
gonna
one
say,
client.
let's change that to not yet. It's been
Yeah,
3 months.
yeah. As of
People
yet,
don't
there's not been
people
one
people don't
client
buy
reaching.
homes like they buy a
Mhm.
Starbucks coffee,
Right.
right?
But
And
from
you
a business, like on
also,
a internal, it's been really
sure,
wonderful. That's been really great. I've been able to make a lot of relationships and get in front of a lot more people and, um, go to different events and have more speaking events, which really fulfills me. So
yeah. And same
yeah.
thing that your husband said back then that I'll say to you now, it will turn into business over time. And
Hmm.
you also reached a younger population that's certainly not ready to buy yet, but they are now more well educated, hopefully. I mean,
Hmm.
we have a 23-year-old daughter, and so I remember the teenage years and, saying things like everyone else does to your kid, and you're like, are you even listening? Like, did that even stick? Are you even going to remember
Hmm.
this? And somewhere down the line, the 17-year-old or 18-year-old that you talk to will be 25 or 26, and they'll be like, I remember that one time I went to an event and that girl, whatever her name was, Nut or something, said something
Hmm.
about credit, and I don't need to have 20% down. And either they'll call you or they won't. But either way, when they buy a home, they'll be more educated, more informed, and able to
Hmm.
make a better decision. So the impact that you've had is tenfold. And let's have you back on in another year and let's re-ask that question, because I feel
Yeah.
pretty darn confident that business is going to roll in over time. And it won't just roll in for you. I mean, look what you did. You said you went to, I mean, we said 20 cities. Let's just say sorry for saying shits and giggles, I can't come up with a better way to say it, that got to 25 states in those 20 cities, and you're only licensed in 7. Like, think about all the business that potentially will refer into your partners
Hmm.
throughout NFM. So, kudos to you, and I believe that business will come around. Um, Talk to me about branding. And I mean, you started to dive into it a little bit earlier and a little bit right now from an internal standpoint. Your role as the VP of the Creator Collective, and that is really truly about that content and that branding. How, like, did any of this change how you think about your different methods of how you put yourself out there?
No, I still put myself out there. I've always known or told myself when I was doing social media, I had to be authentic. And that's what I teach whenever I talk to clients or, coaching in whatever kind of aspect, it's always being authentic. And that tends to be very difficult for people to understand when they are building their brand. And if anything, this trip probably made it to where I'm a little bit more authentic and more vulnerable, because there was a lot of hard, difficult days that I shared. And not that I, wouldn't have otherwise, but I think it was different because prior to doing this trip, there were hard days, but not to the extent on this trip. And so I never felt like I needed to share that. But because I was doing something so different that nobody had done before, and it's like, am I going to fail? Am I not going to fail? Like, I need to update everyone to see what's going on. It felt more of a need to share what was going on in my life, because I tend to share more on a business aspect of education as opposed to what's going on personally with me. But it was very hard not to, because, my whole life was in a bus traveling across the country sharing education. So it was difficult not to share that. So if anything, it made it to where I was a bit more vulnerable on social
Sure.
media.
Yeah, I love that. Any outlets that you would say you feel like did really well for you versus didn't do well, or like I tried something, I've never used TikTok before and now I started using it and I'm going to keep using it? Like any stories like that around the modality or the method that you chose from a social perspective?
So I started on TikTok. That's always kind of been my bread and butter, and that continued to do really well. I did do a slight shift, and um, my majority of my videos that tend to carry a larger view or amount of views are my reenactment phone calls. And when I do those, they tend to be a little bit longer. They're 2, 3, 4 minute video. But when I do that, I unfortunately can't repurpose them to the other platforms because they either max out at 60 seconds or 90 seconds.
Mhm.
And so with having my videos do so well on TikTok, I thought to myself, and I had met a lot of creators and on this trip and had a lot of wonderful conversations. And I thought, well, I need to transition and be able to figure out a way to make these videos still great, but shorten them so I can repurpose them on these other platforms. And I'm grateful that I did because that has helped my following, not at the rate that it did at TikTok, but it has helped my views. It is substantially. It's helped with my followers. So I am glad that I was able to kind of transition those and adjust them a little bit to better suit the other platforms.
Yeah. I also think we all know people have short attention spans. So the shorter the content, especially if you can still make it really meaningful, the better. So it
Yeah.
feels like that was probably on point there as well. When you think about looking back on it, you said you would do it again. What would you do different?
I would have probably hired like a virtual assistant, like before I even went on this trip to start making the outreach, because we had started outreach, but not at the pace and like level that I anticipated that it needed to be. So I definitely would have hired like a virtual assistant because we tried different people on the team to help out, and it really was a full-time job to take on. So um I definitely would have hired somebody before the trip to help with that.
Did you have everything planned out city-wise and you kind of knew how you were going to zigzag, or did any of it organically come about based on the response you were getting from the outreach?
So we knew selfishly that we did not want to go up to the north right away because we were leaving in February and didn't want to potentially get stuck or deal with any crazy weather. So
Sure.
we left and did the southern route. And so because of how we had planned this almost 6 months out, we thought, okay, well, Texas will spend more time. I'm licensed there. Florida, I'm licensed. Tennessee, all of these states that I'm licensed or I have people I know will spend a little bit more time. So we kind of strategically plan that out
Yeah.
and then would reach out and say, hey, we're going to be here during these times. Does this work? And if it didn't, we tried to adjust if we could take a day off here and add it to this place and adjust if needed. But overall, we pretty much planned out our trip ourselves, and then we found a way to work in the events from there.
Yeah, makes sense. And you'd probably follow same blueprint, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the most part. I mean, we had, obviously at the end we adjusted it. We went from Columbus to Kentucky to Chattanooga to Atlanta. So that adjusted that last like 3 weeks, we adjusted it. But outside of that, we pretty much stayed on course.
Yeah. Makes sense to have a plan. It's hard sometimes to decide which one's going to be better, right? Go with the flow and see what happens and, what attention you get in each city, or, have a plan and then move around from there, but it sounds like that worked out well.
Mhm.
Let's think about somebody that's either listening in now or will listen in later that's like, great idea, but there's no way I can get an RV and get on the road for
Right.
3 months. But I'd love to do more interactive outreach.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to somebody on how they could do this on a smaller scale?
So your community, so whether that's the Boys and Girls Club, that's the YMCA, it's the Chamber of Commerce, it's Habitat for Humanity, it's a local community college, it's the high school. If you know that there's programs that the high school has for entrepreneurship, um, essentially anything that you can get involved in with that younger demographic, um, or even with local businesses to try and put together some sort of event. Libraries is another one. So anything that you can kind of get a space donated to you to where then you can donate your time. And it's one of those, it's not something you're going to get paid for. It's really out of the goodness of your heart and wanting to donate your time into your community and be able to show that you are experienced and you're knowledgeable and you're trying to be the best that you can and help out as much as possible in your community. So I would say those are pretty good starting points of places where you could reach out and try to get, some sort of space to have an event at. I do think honestly, it's a lot easier when you are stationary because I didn't realize this, but libraries, like 2-3 months minimum, you have to plan events for libraries because they put their calendar out the month before. And if you're not on that calendar, they're not changing it. Like it's set in stone. So you have to like minimum 2 to 3 months before you want to host an event, you have to reach out to them. So that was something that I learned as well. And, it is easier when you're stationary. You have that flexibility of, hey, when I tell people I'm only in town for these 5 days, they're like, well, we can't make that work. That's okay. Cause now I live here and now I can come whenever you need me to, and we'll make it work with both of our schedules. So, I would say definitely start locally in like your town or your city. And depending how big that is, if you can slowly start to branch out into the suburbs, and then do your rotation. If there's quite a few cities around me, and it's one of those like I'll start where my home base is, and I'll branch out to the surrounding 4, and then I'll branch out to the surrounding 4 from there, and then I'll just start doing a rotation after I build these relationships with those contacts. Because if you're willing to donate your time and not charge them anything, and they're able to fill a space and an event on their calendar, most of the time they're going to be willing to say yes.
Yeah. And you mentioned you partnered with agents in certain cities. Did you see a better outturn from people coming when you partnered with others to kind of co-host the event?
Oh yeah. So there was let's see. So Jane Floyd is a mortgage lender. She has a branch down in Florida in Tampa. And I adore Jane. I think the world of her. She is so knowledgeable. And I said to myself, I know that I'm licensed in Florida. I'd love to have a couple agents come, but I really want to help you if there's any agents that you would like to have come in and figure out with their brand or social media. And so that turned out really well. It was a great response. We had a sold out event for that. And she was able to see some new agents and some of her current agents and really help them, and bring them value. I was up in Columbus, Ohio with Daniel Saw, he runs actually the Great Lakes division at NFM. And we had over 100 people at that event. Ended up being standing room because we had so many. So yes, whenever I partnered up with somebody, it made it a lot easier because they were familiar with that area
Sure.
and the people that live there. And they had a little bit more, ability to reach out and have that community involved.
Yeah, I love that. And I know sales can be really competitive, but great story on, having an event by yourself and having maybe little to no people show up versus partnering with another LO and saying, okay, like we'll each probably get business out of this, but if we do it together, we're going to rise together. We're going to get more people to show up and it's going to be a more impactful event. So I love that idea. Okay, people in the audience, I need more questions from you. In the meantime, I'm going to go fun now. Best or strangest food you tried? while traveling?
Best or strangest food? So, ooh, see, this is where this gets difficult. I really love food. Um, this is hard, but I would say off the top of my head, so we didn't stop in Philly, but
Mm.
we were driving from Baltimore to New York, and so we had to get Philly cheesesteaks. Um, and so there's Geno's, and then there's, oh my God, this is gonna drive me nuts. Hold on. They're right next to each other. Geno's.
Is it Pat's? Katrina's saying
Pat's,
Pat's.
yes, it
Okay.
is. It's Pat's. So there's Geno's and Pat's. And they're, I don't know, Sasha, have you ever been to Philly?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know the streets are tiny.
Yes.
They're all like they're going all kinds of directions. And we didn't take the RV because we parked at a Home
I was
Depot.
gonna
We
say that would be
unhooked.
hard to go around the circle in that thing.
Oh yeah, we unhooked the truck. We had our pickup truck, and I said we have to go get one from each. And this is like 11 o'clock in the morning. They're open 24/7 every day of the year, 365 days. But they have all this construction, and I'm like, I told my husband, get out, get the same from each of them. And we ended up going back to the RV because we couldn't park anywhere. So we just had to go back. And Geno's was, now I was in between the two until I got about halfway through. I was like, no, it's Geno's. So, and they do what's called Cheese Whiz. And I was thinking like cheese in the can, like that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. But they were like, you got to get it, you got to get the Cheese Whiz. So that's how we got it. And it was like melted nacho cheese almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably one of the best things that I've had on the trip.
I can't believe Gino's not here to hear that because he would just feel, notarized for his name at least.
That's funny.
But
Well, hopefully he'll watch this back and then
yeah, or maybe he'll
he'll
join
get a
later.
kick out of
Yeah,
it.
but sounds like Gino's for the win on that. I love that. I don't know how many Philly fans we've got out there and how many would go with you or be against you, but
It's funny because they've had a rivalry for forever. Like
Sure.
they've both been in business for a very, very long time, and they have this major rivalry, and it's like big on social media. If you type their names in, it's like a whole thing. So
Yeah.
I think it's funny, but yeah, it's a big thing apparently in Philly.
Any other takeaways you would share with the group around just this experience, what you've learned, pearls of wisdom?
I would say for sure there are going to be days that are substantially harder than others. Like to the point where, and I'm not saying this just based on if you're going to try to do a road trip across the country and teach financial literacy, but I feel like especially in sales, because if we don't make a sale, we don't get paid. And if we don't get paid, we get discouraged. And it's like, what are we doing wrong? Are we not good at our job? And is it the market? Is it us? And there's a lot of questions that go through your head. And I always have this thought like, the days that are really hard, I'm very grateful for. Not necessarily in that moment in time, but there's always a day down the road that you get past it and you make it past that hard day and you get to a better day, whether that's, great things happen, not so great things happen. It's an average day. And just remember that you've gotten through 100% of the hardest days that you've had to experience. And so, I mean, you're batting 1,000 for your hardest days. So you're still here. I know it's hard, but everybody has them. I promise you. I've had some of my hardest days in like a career standpoint being on this trip. So,
Yeah.
don't let that completely discourage you or keep you down from doing what it is that you love.
Well, you've definitely built some resiliency muscles along the way. One of my favorite books is The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, and I think it's a way to live by as well. And I'm not sure if you practice this, but I practice gratitude every day, but I lean into it even harder on the tough days because I think it not only helps shift our energy, but it also just reminds us that there's lessons in the obstacle too, and to find that lesson, to find that obstacle as the way versus as something that's in the way.
Mhm.
And it sounds like you definitely have learned that and navigated through that in such a graceful manner. Any questions from the audience while we still have Jordan? You guys have been mostly quiet today. Like I gotta start shipping people coffee or energy shots, last chance. All right. Well, I know I've got some housekeeping to do for the upcoming weeks, but thank you so much for being here. Kudos and
Yes,
congratulations to you for making it.
thank you. I
And
appreciate it.
like I said, we're gonna have to have you back on in a year because I want to hear like 1 year out, what's
Yeah,
changed, what's new, are you doing it again? Uh,
yeah.
yeah, so we'll definitely
Okay,
have you
I
back.
love that. Well, I really appreciate you having me on today and everybody that took time out of their days to be here and show up and, just kind of tune in and listening to what it is I have to say. And I appreciate your time, Sasha, and hopefully Gino watches this and he gets a kick out of the Philly cheesesteak. You'll have to tell him about it.
Yeah, yeah, we'll start making some Geno puns from here on out.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. But with that, before you take off, a couple things just to note. Next week, there's going to be a different time. We try really hard to keep it consistent at 11 a.m. Thursdays, but man, people's calendars can get tough. So thanks for rolling with us. But we'll have Josh Metal coming on to talk about what intelligent investors do to get rich. And then the week after, I'll be back hosting with two fabulous women. Candace McNaught and Rachel Brown, who are both from Supreme Lending, actually. But they are great. Candace is the sales leader at Supreme, but she also was a branch manager before. So she's been in LO. She knows what it's like to be in the trenches, but now she's in that corporate role, really trying to help advocate for everything that you as a loan officer need to be successful. And she's bringing on one of their top producers who's not just a manager, but a producing manager to talk about sales strategies that are working for them right now. So super excited for both of these sessions. Hope you will join us. Just a reminder, we have a really cool app. And the one thing I love about this app that most people don't always leverage is it has all like it's like a library of all of the videos and documents and cheat sheets and fact sheets that we've had from over the years. Momentum Builder's been around for 6 years, so there's like so much information in there. So highly recommend that you download that app and use it as a resource. Join our private Facebook group so you get all the content, offers, invites. We do a lot of discounts to events. We just did a discount for Mastermind that passed. We'll have other ones coming up. And follow our LinkedIn page. And what else am I missing, Sonia? I think
Nope.
that's it. Thank you for sticking with us. Have a wonderful rest of your day and we got halfway through 2024. So I'm feeling like the rest of the year is going to be strong. So good luck to everyone else.